the West wanted to continue dumping toxic waste into their waters, and the United States sent the Navy SEALs over there to capture some of these pirates and to protect those waters to allow the dumping to continue. But what has happened with Somalia? The truth of the matter is that Somalia continues, compared to some of the African countries, has actually done better without a government than with a government. Their life expectancy has improved since they haven't had a government. Their one-year-olds that are immunized have increased. Their one-year-olds who are immunized against TB have increased. The number of physicians per capita have increased. The infants with low birth weights have decreased. The infant mortality has gone down. The maternal mortality rate has gone down. The access to health facilities have gone up. Extreme poverty has gone down. People have more radios, more telephones, more TVs, and the deaths from measles have gone down. The only thing are worse were the adult literacy and the combined school enrollment, because all the money that came into the country from the NGOs in the past went to schools. And so they still have schools, but not as many of the kids are going to schools. How do they continue to have trade? Because even without a bank, they kept the same money, because they saw the money as with value. So the people still use the money, but the money doesn't come into existence with debt. And so, in fact, the country is doing better than some of the countries in the area because they don't have a central bank and the money hasn't come into existence as debt. So Somalia, as taking a second look at Somalia, people say, from one point of view, it's a failed state because it doesn't have a government or a central bank, but on the other hand, the people of the country seem to be able to carry on trade, both domestically and internationally, without a central bank. So what do we need to begin to consider, and what does your generation need to consider? The things that I think that it's time to focus on is we need to begin to think about how we're going to end the debt-based monetary system. That countries will always trade, but they must be free to make their own trade agreements based on the needs of their constituents, and not interest payments to central banks and the growth needs of the most powerful countries. And the thing that we're looking at in the United States, because so many things have, you know, the United States started out with separate states and separate states that were sovereign. And so much of the power has been taken from the states to the central government. And people are looking how to remove that power from the central government and get it back local. Because when you have power locally, you can have a little more transparency. And so those are the discussions that people are beginning to have. How do we have transparency in government? How do we have transparency in our banking system? And how do we exercise control locally? And one of the things Catherine Austin Fitts is doing is actually going around the country teaching people how they can use their money locally to invest in businesses locally rather than, you know, going to the Walmarts or the mega stores of the planet. The Money Masters, again, if you want to have a good video, which is on the internet, to talk about how money works and how we can get out of the debt-based system, the Money Masters is a great little movie. It's about an hour. So the question is, can we free our minds? And that's, you know, that's, unfortunately, you know, it's like the generations before leave a mess and they say to you, okay, time to clean it up. But the only way you can clean up a mess is to know what the mess is. And today I hope I've given you some ideas about what the debt-based monetary system is, why it will always draw money away from one sector upward to another sector because of this compounding of interest. But we can find some joy in all of this because if we free our minds, we can begin to laugh at this system and begin to think about how to create a new one. Because we, as humans, we have hearts and minds, and we can put those together to begin to solve the problems of the planet. One of the things we're learning, and one of the things being so great about being alive today is because, you know, we're beginning to learn how much we don't know. And in astrophysics, the astrophysicists have told us that 98% or more of the universe we haven't been able to measure. So that means there are so many things, not only in our world, but in the universe, that we're going to be discovering over the next century. And so you people have a lot of interesting things that are going to be happening. The other thing in medicine we're learning, we used to think that the DNA was the controlling mechanism. And what we're learning is that the organism, it's something called epigenetics, that the organism immediately responds to the environment. That they used to think we had 90% of our DNA was not used. But that 98% of the DNA is there. It's our historical memory of our time on this planet. So whenever there's a new experience or an old experience that perhaps hasn't happened before, our DNA is able to respond. It's an amazing kind of thing. And so we're learning that the DNA is sort of like the central processing unit, but it needs input from the environment. And even our thoughts can now, we know that how we think can alter our DNA. And actually, there's a scientist, she's a neuroimmunologist called Candace Pert. She calls them molecules of emotion, because when we have happy thoughts, we have happy molecules, and when we have sad thoughts, we have sad molecules. So our thoughts can even control how our DNA expresses itself. We're part of a very massive universe, and I think we have to stop thinking as if we're just little people who cannot possibly get our way out of the situations that we found ourselves in. We live on a planet. This is a map. It's called the Dymaxion projection map. Buckminster Fuller was probably one of the most brilliant intellectuals of the 20th century. And basically, he did this map to show us that we live on an island. Planet Earth is an island. We're all connected on this planet. We're not separate little states. We're basically connected, and it's a landmass surrounded by water. That we have to protect our planet, and we have to think about ways that we can protect our planet because it's the only one we have. It's beautiful. It's powerful. So this is the wisdom of the first people who basically say that we are powerful and the power comes within us. They called it the Great Spirit. The Great Spirit is within us. And joy and imagination are innately who we are. And we may feel like kittens, but in fact, we are lions. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, I'll be glad to take any questions. About the banking system. Yes?